I'm going to go ahead and get started. Couple of questions. So this is the last lecture in this room for the rest of the semester. If you are a 1 credit hour student, this is the last lecture you have to complete. And so you can do other things at 4:30 on Mondays. Next week, there's no lectures for anybody. Because of design reviews, we know that you're very busy preparing for them. So we don't have a lecture next week for that. And then, let's see, if you do have a need to have more than the 5 lectures, if you're a 2 credit or 3 credit hour student, there are a couple of different opportunities. We have the leadership workshop, if you're interested in that. We also will have lectures again, kind of in April, all right? And there's ongoing skill sessions that you can participate. Yes?
What are the leadership workshops?
So the leadership workshop series, sorry, can you not talk? All right, the leadership workshop series is basically we explore some leadership frameworks. We use a text for that, and then we talk about how to apply it on your EPICS team or some other kind of situation. So it's leadership training if you're interested in doing something like that. There are 4 lectures you're expected to go, well, 4 sessions. You're expected to participate in all 4 of them because they build on and they're really interactive. So they are not video recorded, okay, related to that. So if you're interested, sign up. We provide the book that you can use during the class, during that session. So you get an opportunity to at least have that during that. Well, you guys are all new to EPICS, but even for people, we sometimes have people repeat it because it's actually, you learn new things every time you go through it. So, all right, any questions about lectures? So design reviews are next week. Hopefully some of you have been practicing and preparing for that. We do have a lecture from previous semesters about giving effective design reviews. There's actually a couple of different ones. There is one that even will help you prepare as a speaker on how to, like if you get nervous in front of people, what are some strategies you can do for that, along with what should your slides look like for a design review. Okay, so there's some couple of different resources you can check out related to that. Okay, any questions about the announcements? Okay, so today we're going to talk about ethics, and hopefully you have completed the ethics survey because we're going to talk about those different situations, and having thought about them and reading them will be helpful in doing that. If for the video lecture people, if you haven't completed it, you should stop and complete it and then continue watching the video for this. So this is one of the scenarios that we had in the ethics survey. I'm not going to read it because hopefully you read it and you're familiar with it, but it's about the racing car and the child with the disability. So one of the things I did want to point out is that all of those scenarios that are in that survey were actually motivated by real-life EPICS projects. There was something that happened that actually is similar. The names were changed, and we changed some of the identity a little bit. So, but actually they do come from real things related to that. So we have the car team that looks at accessible racing for kids. And there was a situation that happened early on in the team that actually motivated this. So here, the parent or caregiver is asking the EPICS team member to lie to the child about their control of the car. So when you thought about this, how many people said in the survey that they would actually lie to the child? Okay. How many said that they wouldn't lie to the child? How many couldn't decide? Okay. So what are the ethical issues that are going on, and why did, like for example, some of you who said yes you would lie, what were the things that you were thinking about? Why would you lie?
Parental authority.
Parental authority, okay, absolutely. So in that situation, so it's what is it respecting? As if you think about the parental authority and the primacy, the importance of a parent-child relationship related to that. But what are some other issues that are going on, right? It's not the only one.
Self-esteem of the child.
Huh?
The self-esteem of the child.
The self-esteem of the child. Right. So if you're thinking about the self-esteem of the child, what would you do in that situation?
I wouldn't lie to the child because I feel like it will be a fun experience for me to do it.
Okay. All right. Yes.
I still would lie personally because, like, I know when I've dealt with a lot of children at Riley, and, like, losing is almost something that they not enjoy, but, like, it lets them feel normal, too. Just, like, that they're not always winning and letting team let win.
Okay.
But it really didn't seem like a bad reason.
Okay. So I think one of the issues here, though, is that in Soapbox Derby, if there's a crash, would they feel responsible? And or maybe it would think that they can drive a car when really they haven't developed the skills to do that. So, I mean, that can be an argument on the other side. For those of you who said, no, you wouldn't lie, what was kind of the principle or reason why, the reason that you wouldn't lie? Who said they wouldn't? Who's a no? Yep, okay.
Well, it's just like what you just said, like if they believe that they can drive a car, then they can potentially like get in a car and do something dangerous that could potentially harm other people and themselves.
Okay, so the concern about the child there. What might be another reason you don't want to lie? Yes?
Eventually they might find out, like once when I was little, they did like a Mars thing for me and I thought I went to Mars and I was pretty pissed when I found out I started.
Right, I mean, and that could happen too, People who believe in Santa for a while and then find out it's really not true, those kinds of things. But yeah, so I mean, that's absolutely it. What's one other principle here too that comes into play? Yes? Yeah, so in general, is it a good thing to lie? What do you say? Huh? Yes, it's a good thing to lie in general? No, so the virtue and character. And I do know people who have been in situations where they were basically lied to, and it was really very, very significant. And they have made the oath that they will not lie about anything because of the potential negative impact that it's had on them. So that could be a principle that becomes very, very important to you, as you kind of go through this. So, kind of thinking about this, and we're talking about parental rights, right? We're talking about character and virtue as underlying things. We're talking about, though, also aspects of child happiness and their state of mind as well. And also being respectful of kind of the child and not necessarily doing things in a way just because they have a disability. Okay, so some of the things going on there. So before I go on, though, for example, for this one, really, and this team was put in a position where initially when they designed the car. So one of the things we think about as a designer, and even though in this situation, you know, you're kind of being forced to choose yes or no, right? What are some other strategies you might do to undertake versus really, I mean, most of the times that's not our only choice, yes or no. What else could you do? What would be another way to handle this? Yes?
Even if you decide to tell the truth, you have a choice on how to phrase it.
Okay, so you can phrase it in a certain way, yes?
You can tell the parent that you're uncomfortable with doing that, and if they want to do that, then they can do that.
Yes, absolutely. So you can talk to the parent one-on-one, let them know you're uncomfortable, and then you can address it that way, and that way you're not getting in the middle of the relationship. What are some other things? So here we're actually posing it as, and the car team will know about this, that the only options were we fake the steering wheel or this child has control. But what's actually a design solution that can do both of those things? Yes?
You could let the child drive it, but then if it's outside of a certain air tolerance, then there'll be a control system that'll bring it back.
Right, so a slip clutch, right? You could actually use a slip clutch that would allow them to be able to do that. So this is the reason why ethics actually is really, really important to think about in design. Because instead of, if we understand these different issues of, you know, wanting the child to have this great experience and have control of the car, but actually concern about their safety, you know, if they actually do have total control over the car. My son actually participated in a couple of these different races. And first of all, there's professional drivers that are actually sitting in the back. So their safety is also of concern too. And they have primary, you know, in the situation, they actually had primary responsibility. And there were kids who were racing down the hill that actually on purpose tried to crash the car because they thought it was fun. So from my point of view, as a parent, there's no way my son has the cognitive understanding that he should be controlling that car all by himself. He's really not capable of doing that. And so those are the things that as a parent and as a designer, you can work together to actually find a solution that was really innovative with that. So that's why this is important to talk about. It's not just don't cheat, don't do bad things, but how can we think about these how ethics affects everyday decisions in what we do as designers, engineers, professionals. Okay, that's why it becomes really important. All right, the next scenario. This was the quality of housing. Again, motivated by an EPICS project. And so for this one, asked to actually rate these houses. They were concerned that the information would be used to actually condemn them and that the people would actually end up homeless. So how many said they would rate the homes? Okay. How many said no, they wouldn't rate the homes? How many couldn't decide? Okay. So what are the ethical issues here on both sides of this? For someone who said they would rate the homes, what were the things that you were thinking about? No. Not rate the homes? Which one? Okay, why wouldn't you rate the home?
Well, if there's a potential that the data we're giving could be used to condemn the homes, then to me it seems like that's something that should come from a professional assessment that perhaps our assessment might not be qualified.
Okay, so what are the issues, kind of underlying issues here? So competency, professional licensing. So that's actually really, really important. And something that actually comes into play often in what we do. How many of you are professional engineers? Right? No. One? No. So the thing is, are you actually qualified to be able to make that And so recognizing that you are learning to be engineers or professionals and that you may not have all the knowledge. It gets a little scary when somebody just says, well, I decided that it was okay or this was good enough. That's not how we can make decisions on as far as some of the technical decisions. So it actually goes very much into the technology as well. What would be some other things as far as other ethical issues? Yes?
Personal experience is like they're probably just gonna tear down the house and build a condo, which these people can't afford.
Okay.
Had that happen to friends, so I would want to rate the house.
Okay, so actually you can bring in those kinds of things because you've actually seen where we're not just making this up. Some of these things can happen, right? So it's the overall concern that is what I'm doing actually going to be beneficial in the long run, the overall good of it. Okay, anything else? Yes?
You might want to consider like the worst cases of the buildings, like if there's buildings in there that are extremely unsafe and like could potentially harm people, and that's something you want to take into consideration because putting people, making them homeless might be better than, end up causing people's deaths.
Okay, so kind of taking into consideration maybe the worst of this. So again, as a designer, as somebody who might be working on this project, what are some of your options? What are different ways of handling this versus just saying yes, no? Yeah.
So it doesn't, in my opinion, it didn't have to be black and white where either they had to stay or they had to go. We could fix the problems and make the houses.
Okay, so kind of maybe as a team you could look at contingency plans if you do identify that, and actually that becomes the what you try and do with that. What are some other things? Yeah.
You can get the landlord to bring the building up to code.
Okay, right. So there are, again, thinking about as designers, as professionals, not this either or often, but what could we have done at the beginning of the process to actually mitigate this concern? Too often we think about ethics too late in the design process, not early enough. So if I'm successful, where will I get to and what will be the results? Thinking about what if I'm successful? Yeah.
Isn't that taking away from what your project partner wants, though? Wouldn't it be important to go to your project partner and say, is this something that we could do for you?
Right. Well, I think absolutely. I'm sorry, I was thinking that, but that's important to actually explicitly say. That these are things that you can have, conversations you can have with your project partner. And they're important to have. Again, thinking about what happens if I'm successful. And being prepared for that success. Really thinking about if we get done, if we finish our project, how is it actually going to be used? And have we considered all of those different things in our design? Okay, one more. The water quality testing. So doing some water testing, actually find out that if you find it, should you report that? Because it's downstream from a major employer in the town. What could happen? So, whoops, not rate the home. This is the water quality. So should you report it? That's what the question should say. How many would say yes? Okay. How many said no? All right. How many said couldn't decide? All right, so I think it's really interesting. There seems to be a little bit more consensus on this one. For those of you who said yes, why? Yep.
There's no way I'm not facing jail time for hiding them.
Okay. That could be a motivating factor. So, go ahead. Yeah.
It can affect, by reporting it, you're actually protecting the children's personal safety, which is something that without reporting it is something you're immediately affecting versus the job outcome of the people, which can be a little bit more flexible.
Okay. Yep. Go ahead. Yeah.
Yeah, the job market is constantly fluctuating. There's always jobs being lost and jobs being in. So when this one goes out,
Okay. All right. So the flexibility with jobs. Over here. Did somebody have? You can go over here. Yes.
Flint,
Huh?
Flint, Michigan.
Oh, yeah. I mean, especially now. Did any of you think of Flint when you thought of this? Absolutely. Seeing what the consequences can be. So what were the things you were thinking? You're thinking about Flint. But you were also thinking, as you're weighing these things and the fact that there was more of a consensus, is there an urgency with this one that you didn't feel with the other ones, or an impact? Did it affect? Yes.
I mean, you have 2 prongs are similar, as in it talks about safety versus financial well-being, but the consequences of this one seem a lot more concrete.
Okay. So here, consequences of related to that, as far as what are the potential consequences doing this. For the person, there was one person who said no, they wouldn't do it. What impacted that decision? Oh, he left. See? Can you make a case for not reporting? Is there an aspect to at least that might be considered? Yes?
It's actually something happening in China. So everybody knows China, not everybody, but most people know like China has a very big problem with the air quality. So that's because government find something that is inappropriate like this, but they just don't shut down because of the job stuff.
Okay.
Yeah, I understand their concern, but it's not a good thing.
Not to report it?
Yeah.
So so is there anyone who can make the case for not reporting it? What would be the issue that you might consider? Yes?
Maybe their family employee.
Okay. I mean, if you think about overall good, I mean, I guess if I don't disagree, but I guess at least considering the fact that if a family doesn't have a job, may not have a house, may not have housing, that impact on them as well. So not only thinking of the one, but actually just thinking about it a little bit holistically. Yeah.
Well, the issue with trying to go at it job-wise is that they can get a job within a few weeks or months, while if their kids are being poisoned by pollutants, that could be years of problems.
Yeah.
It could be the rest of their lives.
Yeah, so, as far as the impact of that. So I'm not saying that I agree that the balance is there, but it's important that you also consider the other aspects, at least in making your decisions. So I'm not disagreeing with where you where you end up on it, but not at least thinking about that as an impact. Because then why is it all that different from the quality of housing issue with that? Was there, did you have something?
You were aware that the plant was already undergoing extensive measures to correct the situation, and that reporting it would only make matters worse.
Yeah.
Make a case for not reporting it.
Yeah. So the one thing that might affect too that I would think about if you were doing this in EPICS, as far as, now in this scenario, the professor confirms it. But you would want to make sure that you're absolutely right in your results before you present some information that you cannot verify that's actually correct. So at least a strategy would be to confirm your results and make sure that if you are going to impact this, that you have that right, okay? And that you can get a professional or someone to actually confirm that what you have found is actually valid. Because I think that is something too that I think becomes really important as far as our responsibilities in EPICS to take a look at these. All right, any other issues? Yes?
I think regardless of the situation, whether what the impact is, if you're being assigned the task of data collection, you have to submit your results regardless of what the consequences are. That's part of the job. So.
Right, and I'm not disagreeing with that part. I guess the thing to at least understand though is that you need to recognize that there are going to be impact. that and being aware of that. And I think for me, I think part of the issue here was that, making sure the results are right. So that, we've done these tests, but, are we using procedures and can we get somebody who's a professional to actually verify? So that actually becomes somewhat an issue in that. So, well, going back for 1 second, would there be anything that you could do to kind of ahead of time, as you're thinking about the project, to be better prepared to mitigate some of these things? What might you do? Yes?
Set your priorities.
Okay, set the priorities. How would you do that?
We look at the, while we were discussing about this in the survey, we have been given those things. Instead of actually picking at them at this moment, we can actually pick them before this thing happens so that you can follow it.
Okay, so thinking about what happens if we do find it. Even before you go collect that first sample, how are you going to handle it and manage it? And what processes do we have to make sure that we have with that? Anything else? Yes?
Looking at the needs of the stakeholder, or just stakeholders in general, and what potential problems you could face in the future.
Yep. Yeah, so look, actually just thinking about, looking at from all the different stakeholder point of view. Yes?
Consulting other people, don't make this decision entirely on your own.
Okay.
Especially if people have more like either authority or knowledge in the area that you're trying to make a decision based off of.
Yes, absolutely. So I think that's, yes.
I have a preset list of ethics guidelines. I know everywhere I've worked, I've always been given some sort of large book that I've never read of the ethical guidelines for that job. So if you establish those ahead of time, then there won't be as much subjectivity when it comes to making the decision.
Right. So if you've already decided, if we find negative results, we're going to report it. Being prepared for that actually will help you should you find them. Instead of getting into that boat and saying, now what do we do, right? So actually thinking about that ahead of time, that if we find them, this is what we're going to do. Okay, so again, I think that is really good. Okay, so thinking about these different things, what is your definition of what does it mean to be an ethical designer, an ethical engineer, an ethical professional? Yes?
I think part of it is just making your chain of who you are going to follow. You would want law at the top, and then whoever is your boss or your project design, and then yourself.
Okay.
So just following that to a key would make you an ethical designer.
Okay. Do we really want to put law at the top?
I think so. I wouldn't want to break any laws for any reason.
Right, but are there things that guide us more than laws? Because are there things that maybe are legal that maybe are not right? Or illegal that might actually be right? Is it acceptable to exceed the speed limit? If you're going to have somebody in your car and you're trying to get them to the emergency room. Technically, no, right? I mean, so there are times, though, could you make the case that it's actually, appropriate or not? Are there things that could, and that's maybe not a good example related to that? Yes?
Being an ethical designer means making decisions not only based on money or interests, but also based on values and just try to make everybody satisfied with your decision.
Right. Okay, so making decisions based on values. Do you think so those of you who are engineers, understanding kind of technical competence goes into being an ethical engineer? Or are those separate? You say yes, why?